The conference room went silent the moment my name appeared on that screen. I'm talking about the kind of silence that makes your heartbeat sound like thunder in your own chest. The kind where 50 people suddenly forget how to breathe. Where the air itself seems to crystallize around a truth so sharp it could cut through steel. My boss's nephew, Jason Miller, golden boy with his designer suits and that smile that never quite reached his eyes, went from corporate hero to ghost white in exactly 2.3 seconds. I counted. When you've spent 6 months watching someone steal your dreams, you learn to measure moments like that. See, 3 minutes earlier, everyone in that room had been applauding him. The CEO himself had been nodding, ready to hand over an innovation award for Jason's groundbreaking AI project. My project. The one I'd coded through sleepless nights, fueled by cold coffee and the desperate need to prove that a black woman from Atlanta's West Side could revolutionize how tech companies analyze data. I sat there in the back row, where I always sat, where people like me always seem to end up, watching this 28-year-old white boy accept praise for work that had my fingerprints all over it. Literally. Every line of code, every algorithm, every innovative solution that made executives lean forward in their chairs. All mine. But here's what nobody tells you about corporate theft. It's not dramatic. There's no breaking and entering, no masks, no weapons. It's just a guy asking to see your work for feedback. Then a closed-door meeting you're not invited to. Then suddenly your innovation is his innovation. And you're supposed to smile and be a team player. His uncle, Robert Miller, director of operations and the reason Jason even had a job, had literally told me to let it go when I tried to speak up. It's just business, Maya. As if my career, my credibility, my future were just collateral damage in their family success story. I'd almost believed I had no choice but to accept it. Almost. But then Marcus Hayes, our CEO, a black man who'd clawed his way to the top of a tech company in a city that celebrates black excellence while still making us fight twice as hard for half the recognition, did something I didn't expect. He pulled up the original file, the one with the metadata, the timestamps, the creation date that proved I'd built this system months before Jason ever came up with the idea. And right there, in the header that Jason had been too arrogant or too stupid to scrub clean, my name. Maya Thompson, senior software engineer. 50 pairs of eyes turned to look at me. Jason's face had gone from white to gray. His uncle started to stand, mouth opening to spin some excuse, some explanation that would make this all go away. Marcus raised one hand. Silent. Definitive. The room stayed frozen. Before we celebrate innovation, he said, his voice carrying the weight of every black professional who'd ever been erased, overlooked, or stolen from, we must recognize integrity. That's when I knew everything was about to change. Before we dive into how this moment came to be, drop a comment below. What city are you watching from? Let's build a community right here, right now. 6 months earlier, I didn't know Jason Miller existed. That was back when my biggest concern was whether the vending machine on the 3rd floor would finally get those dried mango slices I liked, and if I could convince my team lead to let me present my AI concept at the next innovation meeting. Simple problems. The kind you can solve with persistence and a good pitch deck. I'd been at Bright Tech Solutions for 4 years by then. 4 years of being Maya, the brilliant engineer, always brilliant, never promoted. 4 years of watching white men with half my credentials climb past me on the corporate ladder while I got feedback like, "You're doing great. Just keep your head down. And these things take time. Time." As if my melanin came with a mandatory waiting period. But I'd learned to channel that frustration into something productive. Every microaggression, every time someone assumed I was the admin instead of the senior engineer, every meeting where my ideas were ignored until a man repeated them, I took all that and poured it into my work. That's how Project Sentinel was born. I was sitting in my apartment on a Tuesday night, one of those humid Atlanta evenings where the air conditioning fights a losing battle against Georgia heat, when the concept hit me. I'd been analyzing our company's data management system for weeks, frustrated by how clunky and reactive it was. We were always putting out fires instead of preventing them. What if we could build an AI that didn't just respond to data anomalies but predicted them? What if we could revolutionize how tech companies anticipated problems before they became crises? I opened my laptop, a 7-year-old MacBook Pro. I'd been nursing along because brilliant engineers apparently don't get equipment budgets, and started coding. My best friend Shanice called around midnight. "Girl, are you still up working on that thing?" "This thing is going to change everything, Shan." "That's what you said about the last 3 projects you built that nobody gave you credit for." She wasn't wrong. I'd been the ghostwriter of Bright-Tech's success for years. But this felt different. This was bigger than a process improvement or a minor system upgrade. This was the kind of innovation that gets you noticed. The kind that makes it impossible for them to overlook you anymore. "This time will be different," I told her. Famous last words. I spent 3 months building Sentinel. 3 months of early mornings and late nights, of teaching myself new frameworks and solving problems that would have made my MIT professors proud. I tested it on dummy data sets, refined the algorithms, eliminated every bug I could find. By the time I was ready to present it internally, I had something that could genuinely transform how we operated. The system could analyze patterns across multiple data streams simultaneously, identify potential security breaches before they happened, predict system failures up to 6 weeks in advance, and optimize resource allocation in real time. It was elegant, powerful, and entirely mine. I requested a meeting with Robert Miller in early March. He was known for being the ideas guy, the executive who supposedly championed innovation. Everyone said if you wanted your project to get traction, Robert was your ticket. What they didn't tell me was that Robert's definition of championing innovation meant taking credit for other people's work while making them feel grateful for the exposure. Should have known something was off when he showed up 15 minutes late to our meeting, didn't apologize, and spent the first 5 minutes on his phone while I stood there with my laptop open. "Presentation ready." Sorry, he finally said, putting his phone face down on the conference table. "You know how it is. So Maya, it's Maya, right? What do you have for me?" I'd practiced this pitch 100 times. I knew every transition, every key point, every moment where I needed to pause for effect. I walked him through Sentinel's capabilities, showed him the test results, explained the potential impact on both our bottom line and our market position. For the first time since I'd entered that conference room, Robert Miller actually looked interested. This is really something," he said, leaning forward. "How far along is the development?" "It's fully functional. I've been running tests for 6 weeks. All the core features are operational. We'd just need to integrate it with our existing systems and run some larger-scale trials." "And you built this yourself? On your own time?" There was something in his tone I couldn't quite read. Pride? Surprise? Something else? "Yes, sir." I believed in the concept and wanted to prove it could work before taking up team resources. He nodded slowly, that political smile spreading across his face. "That's the kind of initiative we value here, Maya. Real self-starter energy." He paused, drumming his fingers on the table. "I'd like to bring some other people in on this. Get more eyes on it, you know? Build some momentum before we take it to Marcus Hayes, our CEO." The idea of presenting to him directly made my pulse quicken. That was the big leagues. "I'd welcome that," I said, trying to keep my voice professional despite the excitement building in my chest. "Great. Tell you what, send me everything you have. All your files, documentation, test results. I want to review it thoroughly before we loop in the rest of the team. And Maya?" He stood up, extending his hand. "This could be really big for you. For all of us." I shook his hand, gathered my things, and practically floated back to my desk. Finally, someone was taking my work seriously. I should have questioned why he wanted all my files instead of just access to the repository. Should have wondered why he didn't immediately schedule a follow-up meeting. Should have noticed that he never once asked about my vision for implementing the system, only about the technical details of how it worked. but I was too high on hope to see the warning signs. That afternoon, I organized everything into a clean folder structure, wrote detailed documentation explaining every component, and sent it all to Robert's email. Every file, every piece of code, every innovation I'd spent 3 months developing. Even included a file called Project Sentinel Complete M. Thompson Docs, with my full technical breakdown and implementation. Roadmap, my name was right there in the file name, in the document header, in the metadata. I told myself that was professional, smart, a way to ensure proper credit. What I didn't realize was that I'd just handed over the ammunition for my own erasure. The next week, I didn't hear anything from Robert. I told myself he was busy, that these things took time, that important people had full calendars. When I passed him in the hallway, he gave me a thumbs up and said, "Still reviewing? Great work." Week 2, still nothing. I sent a polite follow-up email. No response. Week 3, I started to get nervous. I sent another email, this one asking if there was anything else he needed from me. He replied with a single line, "All good. We'll be in touch soon." That's when Jason Miller appeared in my life. I was in the break room, finally getting those mango slices from the vending machine, when this guy I'd never seen before walked up to the coffee maker. Expensive suit, expensive watch, expensive haircut, the kind of polish that screamed, "I've never had to prove myself." "You're Maya Thompson, right?" he said, flashing that smile. "Jason Miller. I just started in the marketing analysis department." "Nice to meet you," I said. "Because that's what you say, even when you're trying to figure out why this random white guy knows your name." "My uncle, Robert Miller, he mentioned you're working on some innovative AI project. Sounds fascinating." And there it was. The connection. The reason for the sudden interest. "Yeah, I've been developing a predictive analytics system," I said carefully. "I'd love to learn more about it sometime. I'm really into AI applications in business strategy." He said it like he'd just discovered fire. "Maybe we could grab coffee and you could walk me through how it works." Every instinct I had screamed warning, but I also knew how Bright Tech worked. Robert was his uncle. Saying no to Jason was the same as saying no to Robert. And I needed Robert's support if Sentinel was ever going to see the light of day. "Sure," I heard myself say. "I'm usually free around 3. Perfect." Tomorrow? Tomorrow became a series of coffee meetings where Jason asked increasingly detailed questions about Sentinel's architecture. He took notes. He nodded enthusiastically. He said things like, "Wow, you're so smart," in that tone that's technically a compliment, but somehow makes you feel diminished. And like a fool, I answered his questions. Because I thought I was networking. Building bridges. Getting buy-in from someone connected to the decision-maker. I thought I was playing the game smart. I had no idea the game was rigged from the start. The email came on a Thursday morning at 6:47 a.m. Subject line: All Hands Innovation Showcase, Friday 2 p.m., attendance mandatory. I was still in bed when my phone buzzed. One eye half open, braids spread across my pillow like I'd been wrestling with my dreams. Which I had been. Lately, I'd been having this recurring nightmare where I was presenting something important, and everyone in the room was looking through me like I was made of glass. Turns out, nightmares are just practice for reality. The email was from Robert Miller's office. Bright Tech was hosting a special innovation showcase where select team members will present breakthrough projects that represent our commitment to cutting-edge solutions. The CEO would be attending. Board members would be there. This was the kind of meeting that made careers. My heart started racing before my brain fully woke up. This was it. This had to be about Sentinel. Robert was finally ready to move forward, and he was giving me a platform to present to the people who mattered. I called Shanice immediately. "It's 6 in the morning. Maya, they're doing an innovation showcase tomorrow. I think Robert's finally ready to present Sentinel to the CEO." I heard rustling. Then her voice came back sharper, more awake. "Did the email specifically mention you?" I pulled the phone away from my ear, scanning the message again. It says, "Select team members will present." I'm sure I'm one of them. I mean, Robert's been reviewing my project for a month. Silence on the other end. The kind of silence that feels like judgment. What? I asked. Just be careful, okay? Something about this whole thing has felt off from the start. You worry too much, and you trust too easily. We'd been having versions of this conversation since college. Shanice was the friend who saw sharks in every swimming pool. I was the one who believed people were fundamentally good until they proved otherwise. We balanced each other out or drove each other crazy, depending on the day. I'll call you after the meeting tomorrow, I said. You can say I told you so or congratulations. Dealer's choice. I'm hoping for congratulations. I'm preparing for I told you so. Friday morning, I woke up at 5 a.m. Couldn't sleep anyway, so I figured I might as well make use of the nervous energy. I went through my entire presentation 3 more times, updated a few slides, and prepared for every possible question they might ask. I picked out my best blazer, navy blue, tailored, the one that said, "Take me seriously without trying too hard." I twisted my braids into a professional updo and practiced my confident but not threatening smile in the mirror. My grandmother called while I was getting ready. She always had a sixth sense for important days. "How you feeling, baby?" "Nervous, excited, terrified," I admitted, phone wedged between my ear and shoulder while I fastened my watch. "You remember what I told you when you got that job?" "You told me a lot of things, Grandma." "I told you that being twice as good only gets you half as far, but that don't mean you stop being twice as good. It means you be 3 times as good and you document everything. You hear me? Everything. I hear you. And Maya, when you walk into that room today, you walk in like you belong there. Because you do. Don't let nobody make you forget that." I carried those words with me like armor as I drove to the office. The morning sun was already turning Atlanta into a humid blanket, the kind of heat that makes your car's AC work overtime. I practiced my opening lines at every red light. "Good afternoon, I'm Maya Thompson, and I'm here to present Project Sentinel, a revolutionary AI system that will transform how we approach data analytics." By the time I pulled into the Bright Tech parking garage, I was ready. More than ready. This was my moment, and I was going to own it. The office felt different that Friday. There was an energy in the air, people moving with purpose, clusters of employees whispering about the innovation showcase. I caught fragments of conversation as I walked to my desk. "Heard it's a game changer. Miller's been working on something big. Is really excited about this one. Miller." They were talking about Robert, obviously. My sponsor, my champion. The man who was about to introduce my project to the people who could actually make it happen. I got to my desk and opened my laptop, pulling up my presentation one more time. But something felt wrong. I couldn't access the shared folder where I'd stored all the Sentinel files. Access denied. I tried again. Same message. A cold feeling started spreading through my chest. I checked my email. Nothing from Robert about the presentation schedule. No details about when I'd be going up. No coordination whatsoever. I stood up and walked toward Robert's office. His assistant, Patricia, a middle-aged white woman who'd worked there longer than I'd been alive, looked up from her computer. "Is Robert available?" "I just need 5 minutes to coordinate about this afternoon. He's in pre-meeting prep with Jason," she said, not unkindly. He asked not to be disturbed. Jason. Why would Jason be in pre-meeting prep? "Could you let him know I need to speak with him before the showcase?" "It's about my project." Something flickered across Patricia's face. Pity, maybe. Or warning. "I'll let him know you stopped by." I went back to my desk, that cold feeling spreading further. I tried to work, tried to focus on other tasks, but my eyes kept drifting to the clock. Noon. 12:30, 1 o'clock. At 1:45, I headed to the main conference room. It was our largest space, with floor-to-ceiling windows overlooking downtown Atlanta and a screen that took up most of the front wall. The room was already filling up. Department heads, senior engineers, marketing executives. And at the front, near the presentation podium, I saw Marcus Hayes. Our CEO was exactly as impressive in person as his reputation suggested. Tall, impeccably dressed, with the kind of presence that made people unconsciously straighten their posture when he entered a room. He was talking quietly with Robert Miller, who was gesturing enthusiastically about something. I found a seat near the back. Not by choice. The front rows had filled up fast. But from here, I had a clear view of everything, including the presentation screen. At exactly 2 p.m., Robert moved to the podium. "Thank you all for being here," he began, his voice carrying that corporate smoothness that made everything sound important. "Today we're going to see something special. Something that represents the best of what Bright Tech stands for: innovation, initiative, and fresh thinking." My hands were shaking slightly. This was really happening. We have a young talent on our team who's developed a system that could revolutionize how we approach data analytics and predictive modeling. It's the kind of breakthrough that separates industry leaders from everyone else. I sat up straighter, trying to catch Robert's eye so he could call me up. "Please help me welcome Jason Miller, who will be presenting Project Sentinel." The world stopped. I heard the words, but they didn't make sense. They couldn't make sense. Jason Miller. Not Maya Thompson, Jason D. Watched him stand up from the front row of course he'd been sitting in the front row and walk to the podium with that confident stride of someone who'd never had to fight for anything. He shook hands with his uncle, then turned to face the room with that smile. That goddamn smile. "Thank you, Robert. Thank you, Marcus. I'm excited to share what I've been working on for the past several months. Several months. My several months. My sleepless nights. My code. My innovation." He clicked to the first slide, and I felt my stomach drop. It was my presentation. Not similar to mine, it was mine. Same structure, same flow, same technical breakdowns. He'd changed the color scheme from blue to green and replaced my name with his, but everything else was identical. "Project Sentinel is an AI-driven predictive analytics system," Jason began, and even his inflection matched my practice runs. "It represents a fundamental shift in how we can anticipate and respond to data patterns." I couldn't breathe. The room was too hot, too small, too bright. People around me were leaning forward, engaged, impressed. Someone behind me whispered, "Miller's really talented." Marcus Hayes was nodding, asking questions. Good questions. The kind of questions I'd prepared for, and Jason was answering them. With my answers. Using my technical explanations, my implementation strategies, my vision. He even told my story about the Tuesday night breakthrough, except in his version. He was the one sitting in his apartment when inspiration struck. I thought about standing up. Thought about saying something, but what? How do you interrupt a presentation in front of the CEO and 50 colleagues to say, "That's my work"? How do you prove it in a moment? How do you not sound crazy, bitter, emotional? All the words they use to dismiss women like me when we dare to claim what's ours. So I sat there, paralyzed, watching my career get stolen in real time. The presentation lasted 35 minutes. Every minute was a knife twist. When Jason finally concluded, the room erupted in applause. Not polite golf claps, genuine, enthusiastic applause. Marcus Hayes stood up to shake Jason's hand. "This is exactly the kind of forward-thinking innovation we need. Exceptional work, Jason. Really exceptional." Robert was beaming like a proud parent. Other executives were lining up to congratulate him. Someone from marketing was already talking about how to leverage this for client pitches. And I sat there in the back row, invisible, while they celebrated my work under someone else's name. Jason caught my eye for just a second as he basked in the attention. There was something in his expression, not guilt exactly, but awareness. He knew, of course he knew. He turned away and accepted another handshake. After the meeting ended, I couldn't move. People filed out around me, still buzzing with excitement about the presentation. A few colleagues I didn't know well were debating the technical merits, getting details wrong because they didn't actually understand the complexity of what they'd just seen. Finally, the room emptied. Just me and the ghost of my stolen dreams. I pulled out my phone with shaking hands and called Shanice. "How'd it go?" "You were right," I said, my voice barely above a whisper. "You were right about everything." I didn't sleep that night. I lay in bed staring at my ceiling fan, watching the blades go around and around, thinking about how easy it is to disappear. Not physically. Nobody had to make me vanish. They just had to take my work, put someone else's name on it, and act like I'd never existed in the first place. The worst part? It was so clean, so corporate, so perfectly deniable. Around 3 a.m., I gave up on sleep and opened my laptop. I pulled up every email I'd sent Robert about Sentinel. Every message documenting my progress. Every request for feedback. Every meeting summary. I had timestamps. I had technical details he couldn't have known without seeing my work. I had a paper trail that proved, at least to me, that this was mine. But proof and justice aren't the same thing. Not in corporate America. Not when you're a Black woman. Going up against the boss's nephew, Shanice. Came over Saturday morning with coffee and those cream cheese danishes I liked from the bakery on Ponce de Leon. She took one look at my face and pulled me into a hug. Tell me everything. So I did. Every humiliating detail. The way Jason had stood there accepting praise for work he couldn't have created in 1,000 years. The way Robert had beamed like a proud uncle, which of course he was. The way Marcus Hayes had shaken Jason's hand while I sat invisible in the back row. You have to report this, Shanice said. HR legal somebody. This is theft. Theft requires proof that holds up in a system designed to protect people like Jason. You have proof. You said yourself, emails, timestamps, documentation, and Jason has his uncle. A director. Who do you think wins that fight? Shanice set down her coffee hard enough to slosh some onto my kitchen table. So you're just going to let them get away with it? I didn't say that. I wiped up the spill with a napkin, needing something to do with my hands. I'm saying I need to be smart, strategic. If I come out swinging without a plan, I'm just the angry Black woman who can't handle someone else's success. This is bullshit. Maya? Yeah, it is. We sat in silence for a minute, the weight of it settling around us like humidity. What are you going to do? She finally asked. I don't know yet. But I'm not going to do nothing. Monday morning arrived too fast and too slow at the same time. I dressed carefully, professional, polished, unshakable. My grandmother's words echoed in my head. You walk in like you belong there. The office felt different. Or maybe I felt different. I noticed things I'd trained myself not to see before. The way the executive photos in the lobby were almost all white men, with exactly 2 Black faces and 1 Asian woman scattered in like diversity tokens. The way the front desk receptionist's smile was warmer for white employees than for me. Small things. Death by 1,000 cuts kind of things. Jason was already at his desk when I passed the marketing department, surrounded by colleagues congratulating him. Someone had put an innovation champion balloon on his chair. He saw me and had the audacity to wave. I kept walking. Robert's office was on the 4th floor. I didn't have an appointment, but I didn't care. I needed to hear him say it. Needed to hear him try to explain how my project became Jason's project without any acknowledgement, any credit, any humanity. Patricia looked up as I approached. Maya, I don't think I need 5 minutes. Something in my voice must have registered because she picked up her phone, spoke quietly, then nodded. Go ahead. Robert was standing by his window, looking out at the Atlanta skyline like a man who owned it. He turned when I entered, that political smile already in place. Maya, good to see you. Jason's presentation was something, wasn't it? I closed the door behind me. That was my project. The smile didn't falter. I'm sorry? Project Sentinel. Everything Jason presented on Friday. The code, the concept, the implementation strategy. All of it came from the files I sent you 6 weeks ago. Now, Maya. He moved away from the window, hands raised in a placating gesture that made my skin crawl. I understand you might feel like you contributed to some of the foundational ideas, but contributed? The word came out sharper than I intended. I took a breath, forced my voice level. I didn't contribute. I created it. Every algorithm, every line of code, every innovation in that presentation, mine. These things are collaborative. Robert said smoothly. Jason took your initial research and developed it into something presentation ready. That's how teams work. You plant seeds, others help them grow. The gaslighting was so smooth it was almost impressive. Almost. I sent you a complete functional system. With documentation, with my name on the files. And we appreciated that input. But Jason's the one who really ran with it, who saw the bigger picture. He sat down at his desk, picking up a pen, the universal signal that this conversation was wrapping up. Look, I know it can be frustrating when projects evolve beyond their original scope. But that's the nature of innovation. It's iterative. It's theft. The word hung in the air between us like a grenade with the pin pulled. Robert's expression hardened. The friendly uncle act vanished, replaced by something colder, more calculating. That's a serious accusation, Maya. One you should think very carefully about before repeating. It's not an accusation. It's a fact. You're upset. I get it. You feel overlooked. But let me give you some advice, woman to woman. He caught himself. Didn't even have the grace to look embarrassed. Professional to professional. Sometimes in corporate life, we have to accept that our contributions get absorbed into larger efforts. That's not theft. That's collaboration. That's how organizations succeed. By erasing the people who do the actual work. By recognizing that no one person owns an idea once it enters the corporate ecosystem. He leaned back in his chair, studying me. You're talented, Maya. Everyone knows that. But talent isn't enough. You need to understand how to work within the system, not against it. The system just let your nephew steal my work. Jason didn't steal anything. He developed a project that's going to be great for this company. Great for all of us? Including you. You should be proud that your initial research contributed to something so successful. My initial research. Like I'd handed him a Wikipedia article instead of a revolutionary system I'd built from scratch. I want my name on that project, I said. At minimum, I want credit as a co-developer. Robert sighed, like I was a child refusing to understand basic math. That ship has sailed, Maya. The CEO knows it as Jason's project now. The board knows it as Jason's project. Trying to retroactively claim credit would just make you look difficult. There it was. The word they always used. Difficult. Aggressive. Not a team player. Let it go, Robert continued, his voice dropping into false kindness. Take the lesson, keep doing good work, and your time will come. Trust me on this. My time was Friday. And it was stolen. His expression shifted again, losing even the pretense of sympathy. I'm going to say this once, and I need you to really hear me. Jason presented that project with my full support and the CEO's full approval. That's done. Final. If you want to have a future at this company, you need to accept that and move forward. And if I don't, then you're choosing to make things very difficult for yourself. For what? Pride? Principle? He shook his head. Look around, Maya. Look at who succeeds here and who doesn't. The people who succeed are the ones who understand that being right isn't the same as winning. Grandmother used to say that sometimes the most dignified thing you can do is walk away before they see you break. I thought about her as I stood there, thought about all the times she must have faced versions of this same conversation, this same casual dismissal of her worth. Is there anything else? Robert asked, already looking back at his computer screen. No, I said quietly. Nothing else. I walked out of his office with my head high and my hands steady, made it all the way to the bathroom before I let myself feel the full weight of what had just happened. The bathroom was empty, thankfully. I locked myself in a stall and pressed my palms against the cold metal walls, breathing carefully through the rage and helplessness churning in my chest. He'd been so casual about it. So certain that I would accept it, swallow it, move on like a good little employee who knows her place. And the worst part, the part that made me want to scream, was that he was probably right about the optics. If I pushed this, if I made noise, I'd become exactly what they expected me to be. The angry black woman who couldn't handle someone else's success. But if I stayed silent, I disappeared entirely. I heard the bathroom door open. Footsteps. Someone entered the stall next to mine. You okay? A woman's voice. Familiar but not. I peeked through the gap, Sandra from accounting. We'd chatted maybe 3 times total. Yeah, I managed. Just needed a minute. I saw you go into Robert's office. Heard you might have had something to do with Jason's big presentation. I froze. Who told you that? Patricia. She's my aunt. Said you came in pretty upset. A pause. Said she felt bad for you. Pity. Great. Now I was the object of office pity. Look, Sandra continued. I don't know the details, and honestly, it's none of my business. But I've been here 11 years. Seen a lot of people try to go up against Robert Miller. Exactly 0 of them still work here. So I should just accept it? I'm saying pick your battles. That's a battle you can't win, not head-on. She flushed, and I heard her moving toward the sink. But there are other ways to fight if you're smart about it. She left before I could ask what she meant. I stayed in that stall for another 5 minutes, thinking about battles and wars, about visibility and invisibility, about all the ways they make you complicit in your own erasure. When I finally emerged, I looked at myself in the mirror. Same face, same braids, same navy blazer, but something had shifted behind my eyes. Something harder, more determined. Robert was right about one thing. Being right wasn't the same as winning, but I was going to find a way to be both. I spent the rest of that week in a strange limbo, going through the motions at work, responding to emails, attending meetings, acting like my world hadn't just imploded. People kept congratulating Jason. The company newsletter featured him in a spotlight, article about rising innovators. Someone from PR asked him to do a podcast, interview about his creative process. Each instance was a needle under my skin. Wednesday afternoon, I ran into Marcus Hayes in the elevator. Just the 2 of us rising from the parking garage to the lobby. He was reading something on his phone, and I was trying to decide if I should say anything or just ride in professional silence. You're Maya Thompson, correct? He said without looking up. My heart jumped. Yes, sir. Robert mentioned you're doing good work in the engineering department. Keep it up. He glanced at me then, just for a second, and I saw something in his expression I couldn't quite read. Then the elevator doors opened on his floor and he was gone. Keep it up. Standard corporate encouragement. Meaningless, probably, but there had been something in the way he looked at me. Something that felt like assessment. That night, I couldn't shake the interaction. I pulled up Marcus Hayes' bio on the Bright Tech website. MIT graduate, MBA from Harvard. Worked his way up through 3 different tech companies before being recruited as our CEO 5 years ago. Known for turning around struggling divisions, for seeing potential where others saw problems. Also known for being ruthlessly fair. I thought about Robert's words. The CEO knows it is Jason's project now. But did he? Really? Or did he just know what Robert had told him? An idea started forming. Dangerous, maybe. Career-ending, possibly. But I was already disappeared. What did I have to lose? Sunday night, 11:47 p.m. That's when I decided to stop being careful. I was sitting at my kitchen table with my laptop. A cold cup of tea I'd forgotten to drink, and a decision that felt like standing on the edge of a cliff. Shanice had gone home hours ago after trying to convince me to sleep on it for the 100th time. But I was done sleeping. Done waiting. Done hoping that somehow, magically, the system would correct itself and justice would just happen. Justice doesn't just happen. You have to build it, line by line, like code. I opened my laptop and stared at the login screen for BrightTech's internal server. We all had access to the shared drives. It was how we collaborated, how we stored project files, how we left digital footprints of everything we created. Digital footprints. That's what I needed. My hands hovered over the keyboard. What I was about to do wasn't technically illegal. I had legitimate access to these systems, and I was looking for my own files. But there's a difference between technically legal and career safe, and I was about to cross that line. I thought about my grandmother, about the stories she'd told me of working as a secretary in the 60s, How she'd learned to keep copies of everything because her white bosses would regularly take credit for her ideas. "Document everything, baby," she'd said. "Paper doesn't lie, even when people do. Digital paper doesn't lie either." I logged in and navigated to the shared drive where I'd originally uploaded all my Sentinel files. Access denied. Robert had locked me out, just as I'd suspected. But that wasn't the only place those files existed. Every file in our system was timestamped. Every save, every edit, every version had metadata attached to it. Creation date, author, modification history. It was automatic, part of our backup and version control protocols. Most people never thought about it, but I'd been working with databases long enough to know that digital breadcrumbs were everywhere if you knew where to look. I pulled up the system logs. Pages and pages of data, most of it meaningless to the casual observer. But I wasn't a casual observer. I was a senior engineer who understood exactly how our infrastructure worked. There. March 3rd, 2:17 p.m. Project Sentinel complete. M. Thompson, docs. Created by Maya Thompson. March 3rd, 2:43 p.m. Multiple files uploaded to shared folder R. Miller Projects by Maya Thompson. I started taking screenshots, building a timeline. Every upload, every timestamp, every piece of metadata that proved I'd created these files weeks before Jason had supposedly developed the project. Then I checked Jason's file history. He'd been smart enough to create his own versions of everything, but he hadn't been smart enough to scrub the metadata completely. I could see where he'd copied my files, see the original creation dates that predated his employment in the analytics department, see the digital fingerprints he'd left behind, but I needed more than timestamps. I needed something undeniable. I navigated to the backup server, the automated system that saved versions of all our work every 24 hours. It was designed to protect against data loss, but it also created a perfect audit trail. Every version of every file preserved with its metadata intact. I found the backup from March 4th, the day after I'd sent everything to Robert. And there it was, the complete Sentinel project, every file marked with my username as the creator. Now for the hard part. I pulled up the version of the project that Jason had presented. The one that was now officially his in the company records. Same structure, same core code, but with his name in the headers and some superficial changes to make it look different. I opened both versions side by side and started documenting. Every algorithm that was identical. Every section of code that matched mine exactly. Every technical solution that he couldn't have. Independently developed because it required knowledge of 3 specific frameworks and a custom integration method I'd invented, specifically for this project. It took me 4 hours. 4 hours of meticulous documentation, of building an airtight case, of assembling evidence that even the most biased observer would have to acknowledge. By the time I was done, I had a 40-page document with screenshots, timeline analysis, code comparisons, and metadata reports. I called it Sentinel Authorship Documentation, mthompson.pdf. My hand hovered over the keyboard again. This was the moment. Once I sent this, there was no taking it back. I'd be officially challenging Robert Miller, officially calling out his nephew, officially putting my career on the line. I thought about what Robert had said. The people who succeed are the ones who understand that being right isn't the same as winning. Maybe he was right. Maybe I was about to commit career suicide over principle. But then I thought about every Black woman who'd come before me, who'd been erased and dismissed and told to be grateful for the scraps. I thought about the ones who'd stayed silent and the ones who'd spoken up. I thought about which version of myself I wanted to be. I opened my email and typed Marcus Hayes' address into the recipient field, the CEO. Not HR, not some middle manager who'd bury this, but straight to the top. If I was going to bet everything, I was going to bet big. Subject: urgent. Documentation regarding Project Sentinel authorship. I stared at that subject line. Too aggressive? Not aggressive enough. Would he even read it? Or would his assistant filter it out before it reached him? Then I remembered that look he'd given me in the elevator. That moment of assessment, I started typing, Mr. Hayes, I am writing to bring to your attention a matter of significant ethical concern regarding Project Sentinel, which was presented by Jason Miller on Friday, April 14th. I am the original creator of this project. I can provide comprehensive documentation proving authorship, including time-stamped files, metadata, version histories, and technical details that demonstrate I developed this system independently over a 3-month period before it was presented under Mr. Miller's name. I understand this is a serious allegation, and I would not make it without substantial evidence. Attached is complete documentation of my authorship, including file creation dates, backup versions, and technical analysis. I am requesting a formal review of this matter. I am available to discuss this at your earliest convenience and can provide any additional information needed. Respectfully, Maya Thompson, Senior Software Engineer, Professional, Direct, Factual, no emotion, no accusations beyond the necessary, just evidence and a request for review. I attach the 40-page documentation file. My finger hovered over the send button. This was it. The point of no return. Once this email left my outbox, everything would change. Either I'd get justice or I'd get destroyed. There was no middle ground anymore. I thought about calling Shanice, getting one last opinion, one last voice of reason. Instead, I thought about that balloon on Jason's desk. Innovation champion! I hit send. The email disappeared from my screen with a soft whoosh. Done. Out there. In the CEO's inbox, waiting like a bomb. I closed my laptop and sat in the silence of my apartment, listening to Atlanta's late-night sounds filtering through my window. Distant sirens. The rumble of traffic. Someone's bass-heavy music from a few buildings over. I'd done it. For better or worse, I'd chosen to fight. Now I just had to wait. Monday morning felt like walking into a minefield blindfolded. I got to work early before most people arrived and went straight to my desk. My email showed that the message to Marcus had been delivered at 3:52 a.m. Read receipt. None. I didn't know if that was good or bad. The morning crept by with excruciating slowness. Every notification made my heart jump. Every footstep past my desk made me wonder if it was security coming to escort me out. Every email that wasn't from the CEO felt like a reprieve and a disappointment simultaneously. By lunch, I'd accomplished approximately nothing. I'd opened the same spreadsheet 4 times and stared at it without seeing any of the numbers. "You look like you're about to throw up," said a voice behind me. I turned to find David Chen, one of the other senior engineers, holding 2 sandwiches. He dropped one on my desk. "Turkey and Swiss, my usual from the deli downstairs." "I didn't order this," I said. "No, but you've been staring at your screen like it's about to explode for 3 hours, and I figured you forgot to eat." He pulled up a chair. "Want to talk about it?" David was one of the few people at Bright Tech I actually trusted. He'd been here longer than me, had his own stories of being overlooked because his last name was Chen instead of Miller or Hayes, and had never once taken credit for work that wasn't his. "Can't really talk about it," I said carefully. "This about Jason's big presentation?" I looked at him sharply. "What do you mean?" "Come on, Maya. I've worked with you for 4 years. I know your coding style. I saw that presentation." He unwrapped his sandwich. "That was your work." Something in my chest loosened slightly. Someone knew. "Can you prove it?" he asked quietly. "I sent documentation to Marcus Hayes last night." David stopped mid-bite. "You went straight to the CEO? Was there a better option?" "I mean, no, probably not. But damn," he set down his sandwich. "That's either brilliant or career suicide." "Probably both." We sat in silence for a minute, the weight of what I'd done settling between us. "For what it's worth," David said finally, "I hope you buried them with evidence, because if you're going to take a shot at Robert Miller, you better not miss." I didn't miss. Good. He stood up, picking up his lunch. "And Maya, if they try to retaliate, I'll back you up. I'll testify or whatever you need." What they did was bullshit. After he left, I managed to actually eat the sandwich. It helped, having one ally. One person who saw the truth and was willing to say it out loud. My phone buzzed. Text from Shanice. Any word? Nothing yet. Want me to come over tonight? Yeah, bring wine. The afternoon dragged on. At 4:30, I saw Jason walk past with a group of marketing people, all laughing at something he'd said. He looked so comfortable, so confident. Why wouldn't he be? In his world, he'd done nothing wrong. He'd just been smart enough to recognize a good opportunity when his uncle handed it to him. At 5:15, my phone rang. Unknown number, but a local area code. This is Maya Thompson. Ms. Thompson, this is Rachel Kim from Marcus Hayes' office. Mr. Hayes would like to schedule a meeting with you. Would tomorrow at 9 a.m. work? My heart started hammering. Yes, that works. Excellent. His office, 4th floor executive suite. Please arrive a few minutes early. She hung up before I could ask any questions. Tomorrow at 9 a.m., less than 16 hours away. I grabbed my things and headed for the parking garage, not trusting myself to stay in the office another minute without my face giving everything away. In my car, I finally let myself breathe. He'd read it. Marcus Hayes had read my documentation and wanted to meet. That had to mean something, or it meant he wanted to fire me in person. Hard to say. I drove home on autopilot, Atlanta's rush hour traffic barely registering. When I got to my apartment, I found Shanice already there, sitting on my doorstep with 2 bottles of wine and a bag of takeout. How'd you know I was on my way? I asked. Because I know you. And I figured if you were going to spiral, you should at least spiral with carbs and alcohol. We ate Thai food on my couch, and I told her everything. The documentation. The email. The meeting scheduled for tomorrow morning. What do you think he wants? I asked. Could be anything. Could be he believes you and wants to fix it. Could be he wants to hear your side before deciding. Could be he wants to fire me quietly before I become a problem. I was going to say, hear the full story, but sure, let's go with your version. She poured more wine into my glass. Have you thought about what you're going to say? Just the truth. That's all I have. The truth is good. The truth is powerful. She looked at me seriously. But Maya, you need to be prepared for this to go badly. Robert Miller has been here for 15 years. His nephew is family. I'm the expendable one. I know, I took a long drink. But I sent that email anyway, because I'm tired of being expendable. We stayed up late, talking through scenarios and strategies, until Shanice finally crashed on my couch around midnight. I went to my bedroom but couldn't sleep. Tomorrow at 9 a.m. I'd sit across from one of the most powerful Black executives in Atlanta tech, and I'd ask him to choose justice over politics, truth over convenience, me over the system that had protected people like Robert Miller for decades. I had 40 pages of evidence. I had David's support. I had my own integrity. Would it be enough? I stared at my ceiling fan again, watching the blades spin in the darkness, and waited for morning. I wore my armor that Tuesday morning. Not literal armor, though part of me wished I could walk into that meeting wrapped in steel. No, this was the armor I'd learned to wear over 4 years of navigating predominantly white corporate spaces. The perfectly tailored black pantsuit my mother had bought me when I got the job. The silk blouse that said professional without trying too hard. The minimal jewelry that couldn't be called distracting. The natural makeup that enhanced without being too much. My braids were pulled back in a sleek bun. Conservative. Unthreatening. Exactly what they expected. I hated that I knew how to do this. Hated that I'd spent years learning the unspoken rules of making white people comfortable while advocating for myself. But this morning, I needed every advantage I could manufacture. Shanice had left early, but not before making me eat breakfast and giving me a pep talk that was half encouragement, half warning. Remember, you're not asking for permission to be right. You're presenting facts. Don't apologize. Don't over-explain, and for God's sake, don't cry. I'm not going to cry. I know you're not. I'm just saying it out loud so the universe knows too. I arrived at Bright Tech at 8:35 a.m., 25 minutes early, enough time to use the bathroom, check my reflection one more time, and practice the opening lines I'd rehearsed in my car. The executive suite on the 4th floor was a different world from the rest of the building. Plush carpet instead of industrial tile, actual art on the walls instead of motivational posters, and a silence that felt expensive. Rachel Kim, Marcus Hayes' assistant, greeted me with a professional smile that gave away nothing. Mr. Hayes is running a few minutes behind. Can I get you water? Coffee? Water would be great, thank you. She brought me a glass with actual ice and a lemon wedge, then gestured to a leather chair near the window. He shouldn't be long. I sat, trying to look calm while my pulse hammered in my ears. Through the window, I could see downtown Atlanta stretching out under a clear morning sky, the same city where my grandmother had worked as a secretary, where my mother had fought for her teaching position, where I was now fighting for my right to be recognized for my own work. Some things change, some things don't. At 9:07, Marcus Hayes' office door opened. But it wasn't Marcus who emerged first. It was Robert Miller. My stomach dropped. He looked surprised to see me, then quickly rearranged his features into something neutral. We made eye contact for exactly 1 second before he looked away and headed toward the elevator without a word. What the hell was he doing here? Ms. Thompson? Rachel was standing by the now open door. Mr. Hayes will see you now. I stood on legs that felt suddenly unsteady and walked into the CEO's office. It was exactly as impressive as I'd imagined. Floor-to-ceiling windows, a massive desk that probably cost more than my car, and bookshelves lined with titles about leadership, innovation, and the future of technology. Marcus Hayes stood by the window, silhouetted against the Atlanta skyline, looking at something on his phone. He turned as I entered, and I was struck again by his presence. Not physically intimidating, he was tall but not towering, but there was something in the way he occupied space that made you pay attention. Ms. Thompson, thank you for coming. He gestured to a chair across from his desk. Please sit. I sat, spine straight, hands folded in my lap, professional, composed, not giving away the fact that my heart was trying to escape my chest. Marcus returned to his desk, setting his phone face down. For a long moment, he just looked at me. Not aggressive, not kind, just assessing. Like I was a puzzle he was trying to solve. I read your documentation, he said finally. All 40 pages. Very thorough. Thank you, sir. I also had our IT department pull the original files and verify the timestamps you provided. Everything checks out, he paused. You built Project Sentinel independently over a 3-month period. Jason Miller presented it as his own work. Is that an accurate summary? Yes, sir. And Robert Miller, Jason's uncle and a director at this company, was aware of the original authorship. Yes, sir. I sent him all my files 6 weeks before the presentation. My name was on the documentation. Marcus nodded slowly, leaning back in his chair. Robert was just in here. Do you know what he told me? This was it. This was where Robert had spun some story, some explanation that would make this all go away. I braced myself. He told me that you were a contributor to the project, but that Jason had taken your preliminary research and developed it into something presentation-ready. He suggested that you were upset about not receiving adequate credit for your initial input. Marcus's expression didn't change, but something in his tone made it clear what he thought of that explanation. He recommended that we add your name to the project documentation as a contributing engineer and move on. Contributing engineer. Not creator. Not lead developer. Just someone who'd helped around the edges. That's not what happened, I said, keeping my voice level. I know. Marcus opened his laptop and turned it to face me. On the screen was my original file, the one I'd sent to Robert back in March. This is your work. Not preliminary research. Not initial input. A fully functional, innovative system that represents exactly the kind of forward thinking we claim to value at Bright Tech. I couldn't read his expression. Was he angry at who? At me for causing problems or at Robert for creating them? Can I ask you something, Ms. Thompson? Of course. Why did you send this to me instead of going through proper channels? HR? Your direct supervisor? The ethics hotline? It was a fair question. Also a dangerous one. Because proper channels protect people like Robert Miller, I said carefully. I've worked here long enough to know how these things go. If I'd reported this through HR, it would have been investigated by people who report to Robert. If I'd gone to my supervisor, they would have told me to take it up with Robert. The ethics hotline? I shook my head. That's where complaints go to die quietly. So you decided to go straight to the top. I decided to go to the one person in this company who might actually care about the truth more than about politics. Something shifted in Marcus's expression. Not quite a smile, but close. That's either very brave or very naive. Probably both, sir. This time he did smile, brief but genuine. Then his expression grew serious again. You put me in a difficult position, Ms. Thompson. Robert Miller has been with this company for 15 years. He's a director. He has relationships, allies, institutional knowledge. Firing him would create ripples. My heart sank. Here it came, the careful explanation of why nothing could actually be done, why I should accept the compromise, why rocking the boat was bad for everyone. But, Marcus continued, I didn't build this company by protecting people who steal from their employees. I didn't become CEO by valuing politics over integrity. He closed the laptop. I called you here to tell you that I believe you. More than that, I'm going to do something about it. I couldn't breathe. Sir? There's an all-hands meeting scheduled for 2 p.m. today. Different purpose originally, quarterly results, that sort of thing. I'm going to use it for something else. He stood up, moving back to the window. I'm going to tell this company exactly what happened with Project Sentinel. I'm going to present the evidence, and I'm going to announce appropriate consequences. Consequences? He turned to face me. Jason Miller will be terminated effective immediately. He knowingly presented stolen work as his own. That's not a mistake, it's fraud. And Robert? Marcus's expression hardened. Robert enabled and encouraged the theft. Worse, he attempted to cover it up and gaslight you when you confronted him. He'll also be terminated. I won't have directors who operate that way, regardless of how long they've been here. I couldn't process it. It was too much, too fast, too good to be real. You're firing both of them? I'm firing both of them and promoting you to Senior Innovation Manager, effective immediately. You'll report directly to me, lead a team of your choosing, and have full authority over Project Sentinel and any future innovations you develop. He returned to his desk. I should have asked you this first. Are you interested in that role? Yes. Yes, sir. Absolutely. Good. Because I don't just want to correct this injustice, Ms. Thompson. I want to send a message to everyone at Bright Tech about what we actually value, and that message needs you at the center of it. My hands were shaking. I clasped them tighter to hide it. Thank you. I don't even know what to say. You don't have to say anything. You did the work. You documented the truth. You had the courage to bring it forward knowing it might cost you everything. He sat down, looking at me directly. That's exactly the kind of integrity I need leading innovation at this company. We talked for another 20 minutes about the logistics, the all-hands meeting, how the announcement would be structured, what I should expect in terms of backlash and support. Marcus was thorough, strategic, thinking 3 steps ahead like a chess player. There will be people who resent this, he warned. People who think you played the race card or caused trouble over nothing. Robert and Jason both have allies here. I know. Can you handle that? I thought about my grandmother, about my mother, about every Black woman who'd had to be twice as good for half the credit. I've been handling versions of that my whole life, sir. I can handle it now, too. He nodded, satisfied. One more thing. The meeting at 2 p.m., Robert and Jason don't know what's coming. They think it's a standard quarterly update. I need you to be there, but I need you to act like everything is normal until I make the announcement. Can you do that? Yes, sir. Good. Sit wherever you normally sit. Don't give anything away. When I call on you to come forward, that's when everything changes. I left Marcus's office in a daze, my mind spinning. Rachel gave me a knowing smile as I passed. She'd probably seen this play out already, knew what was coming at 2 p.m. The elevator ride down felt surreal. Had that really just happened? Was Marcus Hayes really about to publicly expose Robert and Jason? Was I really about to become a manager? I pulled out my phone and texted Shanice. Call me, now. She called before I even made it to my desk. Well? He believed me. All of it. And there's an all-hands meeting at 2 p.m. He's going to expose everything. Shanice screamed. Actual screamed. I had to pull the phone away from my ear. Maya Thompson. Are you telling me the CEO is about to publicly drag Robert Miller and fire him? And Jason, more screaming. I was crying now, couldn't help it. 4 years of being overlooked, 6 weeks of being stolen from, 1 week of being gaslit. It was all coming out in tears I couldn't stop. I'm so proud of you, Shanice was saying. So goddamn proud. You did it. You actually did it. It's not over yet. But you won. That's what matters. You fought and you won. I wiped my eyes, careful not to smudge my makeup. I need to get through the next few hours without giving anything away. Marcus wants me to act normal until the meeting. Can you do that? I have to. The morning passed in slow motion. I sat at my desk, pretending to work while my mind raced through everything that was about to happen. I saw Jason twice, once in the break room, once walking past with his marketing team. Both times he looked right through me, comfortable in his stolen glory, not for much longer. At 1:30, people started moving toward the main conference room. All hands meetings were mandatory, so the room would be packed. Every employee, every department, everyone would witness what was about to happen. I waited until 1:55 to head over, not wanting to sit in there with my secret burning a hole through my composure. The room was already full, people chatting, checking phones, that low buzz of energy that comes with company-wide gatherings. I found a seat in the middle section. Not too close, not too far back. Robert and Jason were in the third row, looking relaxed and confident. Robert was laughing at something with another director. Jason was on his phone, probably texting someone about how important he was. At exactly 2 p.m., Marcus Hayes walked to the front of the room. The buzz faded to silence. Thank you all for being here, he began, his voice carrying easily through the space. I know you were expecting a quarterly results meeting. We'll get to that. But first, I need to address something more important. He paused, letting the weight of those words settle. Before we celebrate innovation, we must recognize integrity. I saw Robert shift in his seat. Something in Marcus's tone was wrong, or rather, right in a way that spelled danger. 2 weeks ago, we held an innovation showcase. Jason Miller presented Project Sentinel to widespread acclaim. It was impressive work, innovative, exactly the kind of breakthrough that could define our company's future. Jason was smiling slightly. Robert looked proud. There's just one problem, Marcus continued. Jason Miller didn't create Project Sentinel. The room went dead silent. Maya Thompson did. Every head turned to look at me. 50 pairs of eyes, all finding me at once. My face went hot, but I kept my expression neutral. Professional. Marcus clicked to the next slide, my original file, with my name clearly visible in the header. This is the original documentation for Project Sentinel, created by Ms. Thompson over 3 months, sent to Director Robert Miller 6 weeks before Jason's presentation. Another click, the timestamp data. Here's the metadata proving creation date, author, and version history. Robert had gone pale. Jason looked confused, then panicked. Let me be very clear, Marcus said, his voice harder now. This isn't a matter of collaboration gone wrong or credit disputes. This is intellectual theft. Jason Miller knowingly presented stolen work as his own. Robert Miller enabled and covered up that theft, someone gasped. The room was frozen, everyone watching this corporate execution play out in real time. Effective immediately, Jason Miller is terminated for ethical violations. Robert Miller is terminated for breach of directorial responsibility and integrity standards. Robert stood up. Now wait just a... Sit down, Robert. Marcus's voice wasn't loud, but it cut through the room like a blade. Security is outside. You'll be escorted out after this meeting, both of you. Robert sat, his face red with rage or humiliation or both. Jason looked like he might be sick. Maya Thompson, Marcus continued, and his voice softened slightly. Would you please come forward? This was it. The moment everything changed, I stood on shaking legs and walked to the front of the room, past rows of shocked colleagues, past Robert, who wouldn't look at me, past Jason, who was staring at his hands. When I reached the front, Marcus extended his hand. I shook it, and the gesture felt monumental. A CEO publicly aligning himself with justice, with truth, with me. Ms. Thompson has been promoted to Senior Innovation Manager, reporting directly to me. She will lead Project Sentinel's implementation and oversee our innovation initiatives going forward. Applause started, tentative at first, then growing. David Chen was on his feet, clapping hard. Others joined. Not everyone. I could see faces that looked skeptical, uncomfortable, even angry. But enough people. Enough to make it real. Marcus leaned in, speaking quietly so only I could hear. "Breathe, Ms. Thompson. You earned this," I breathed. And I stood there, in front of everyone, finally visible. Time does strange things in moments like that. I stood at the front of that conference room, Marcus Hayes beside me, and watched reality fracture into 100 different reactions simultaneously. Some people were still clapping. David Chen looked like he might start a standing ovation. Others sat frozen, processing what they'd just witnessed. And a few, I could see them clearly, scattered throughout the room, looked angry, resentful, like I'd just committed some unforgivable sin by refusing to disappear quietly. But none of that mattered as much. As the two men in the third row, Jason had his head down, staring at his lap like if he looked small enough he might vanish entirely. His expensive suit suddenly looked like a costume, something he'd been playing dress-up in, and now everyone could see he was just a kid who'd gotten caught stealing from the cookie jar. Robert, though. Robert was a different story. He sat rigid in his chair, jaw clenched so tight I could see the muscles working beneath his skin. His face had gone from pale to red to a kind of mottled purple that suggested his blood pressure was somewhere near stroke territory. And his eyes, when they finally found mine, carried pure, distilled hatred. I'd taken something from him. Not just his nephew's fake career or his own position of power. I'd taken his certainty that the system would protect him, that family connections mattered more than merit, that he could do whatever he wanted to people like me without consequence. That loss was written all over his face. "I know this is unusual," Marcus continued, his voice cutting through the murmur that had started to build. "We don't typically handle personnel matters publicly. But this situation required transparency. It required everyone in this company to understand what we will and will not tolerate." He clicked to another slide, a bullet point list that appeared on the screen behind us. Moving forward, BrightTech commits to the following. First, all innovation projects will be tracked through a centralized system with clear authorship documentation. Second, we're implementing a whistleblower protection policy that reports directly to my office, bypassing departmental politics. Third, any employee who witnesses or experiences credit theft will have multiple channels to report it safely. Smart. He wasn't just punishing Robert and Jason. He was systemizing the solution, making it harder for this to happen again, making my victory mean something beyond just me. "These changes will be implemented immediately," Marcus said, "and they're non-negotiable. If you have concerns about them, my door is open. But if you have concerns about our commitment to integrity and fairness, maybe BrightTech isn't the right place for you." That last line landed like a hammer, a warning shot to anyone thinking about pushing back, about defending Robert and Jason, about making my life difficult in the aftermath. "I'll take questions now," Marcus said, "and I expect them to be professional." For a moment, nobody moved. Then a hand went up in the back. Sarah from marketing, mid-40s, white woman who'd always been cordial to me in that distant, professionally polite way. "Yes, Sarah? How do we know? I mean, I'm not doubting anyone, but how do we know the documentation is authentic? Couldn't files be manipulated?" It was a fair question, asked in a way that wasn't overtly hostile. But I could hear the subtext. How do we know you're telling the truth and not just playing some kind of game? Marcus looked at me. "Ms. Thompson, would you like to address that?" This was a test. Not of my guilt or innocence, that was already established, but of whether I could handle being a leader, being visible, being challenged in front of everyone. I stepped forward slightly, finding my voice. The documentation includes metadata that's automatically generated by our systems. Creation dates, modification histories, backup timestamps. I didn't generate that data. The system did as part of our standard protocols. IT independently verified everything before this meeting. You can request the same verification if you want. I kept my tone even, factual. Not defensive, not aggressive. Just confident in the truth. Sarah nodded slowly. Okay, thank you. Another hand. Marcus pointed. Go ahead, James. James was a developer I'd worked with occasionally. Asian guy around my age who'd always seemed decent enough. What happens to Project Sentinel now? Does it move forward, or does this whole situation kill it? It moves forward, Marcus said firmly. Under Ms. Thompson's leadership, as it should have been from the start. This is about correcting an injustice, not punishing innovation. The project is solid, the technology is sound, and now it has proper leadership. More hands went up. Questions about implementation timeline, about my new role, about how this would affect current projects. Normal questions, business questions. The kind of questions that meant people were moving past the shock and into practicality, but not everyone. This is bullshit. The voice came from the middle of the room. Male, white, probably late 30s. I didn't know his name, but I'd seen him around. One of Robert's guys. Someone who'd benefited from that circle of protection. The room went silent again. But this time the silence felt dangerous. Marcus's expression didn't change. Would you like to elaborate on that? You're ruining two people's careers over what? Some files and timestamps? Maybe they collaborated? Maybe there was a misunderstanding. But you're treating this like some kind of crime when it's just normal business. Theft isn't normal business, Marcus said, his voice dropping to something colder. And if you think it is, we need to have a very different conversation about your future here. I'm just saying what everyone's thinking. This feels like... He paused, clearly trying to find words that wouldn't get him immediately fired. Like it's about more than just the project. There it was. The thing nobody wanted to say out loud, but everyone was thinking. The implication that this was about race, about me playing some kind of card, about Marcus protecting me because we shared melanin. I felt the anger rising in my chest, hot and sharp. Felt the urge to defend myself, to explain, to make him understand that I'd earned this, that the evidence was overwhelming, that his comfort with Robert and Jason getting away with theft said more about him than it did about me. But before I could speak, Marcus did. Let me be very clear about what this is about, he said. And his voice carried the weight of every barrier he'd broken to get to that CEO position. This is about a senior engineer who built something revolutionary and had it stolen. This is about a director who abused his position to benefit his family member at the expense of a qualified employee. This is about maintaining standards of integrity that apply to everyone, regardless of who their uncle is. He paused, letting that sink in. Now, if you think calling out theft is unfair because it inconveniences people you like, that says something about your values. And if you think I made this decision based on anything other than documented evidence and ethical standards, you're welcome to examine that evidence yourself. IT has copies. But what you're not welcome to do is suggest that justice is bullshit, just because it doesn't favor the people you expected to win. The man sat back, face red, clearly wanting to say more but smart enough to know when he was outmatched. Anyone else? Marcus asked, his tone making it clear that challenges were welcome but would be met with the same uncompromising force. Silence. But I could feel the room dividing itself. Those who were with me, those who were against me, and those who were just trying to figure out which side would benefit their careers more. Welcome to leadership, I thought. This is what visibility costs. All right, Marcus said. We'll move on to quarterly results now. Ms. Thompson, thank you. We'll meet this afternoon to discuss your transition into the new role. That was my cue to return to my seat. I walked back down the aisle, acutely aware of every eye tracking my movement. Some looks were supportive. David gave me a subtle thumbs up. Others were hostile. I caught 3 separate glares that could have frozen water, and then I passed the third row. Robert was still sitting there, still locked in that rigid posture of barely contained rage. As I passed, he leaned forward slightly and spoke just loud enough for me to hear. "You'll regret this." I stopped, turned to look at him directly. "No," I said quietly, so only he and the few people immediately around us could hear. "I won't, but you will." His eyes widened slightly, surprise that I'd responded maybe, or recognition that he'd just lost whatever moral high ground he'd been clinging to. Either way, I didn't wait for his reply. I kept walking, head high, and returned to my seat. Marcus continued with the quarterly presentation. Revenue numbers, growth metrics, market position. I tried to pay attention, but my mind was spinning too fast. I'd just watched a man get fired in front of the entire company. I'd just been promoted to a position I'd barely dreamed about. I'd just become a target for everyone who thought I'd gotten something I didn't deserve. The meeting ended at 3:15. People filed out in clusters, voices low and urgent, already gossiping, already forming opinions and alliances. I stayed in my seat, not quite ready to face the gauntlet of reactions waiting outside that conference room. David appeared beside me. That was the most intense thing I've ever seen in corporate America. "Yeah, you okay?" "Ask me in a week." He sat down in the empty chair next to me. "For what it's worth, you were right to do it. Everyone in that room knows it, even if some of them won't admit it. That guy who called it bullshit, Greg Patterson, he's been Robert's lapdog for years. Don't worry about him. There's going to be more like him. Probably. But there are also people like me who've got your back. You're not alone in this." I looked at him, this Asian American engineer who understood at least some version of what I'd been through, who'd faced his own versions of being overlooked and underestimated. "Thank you, David. Really." He stood up. "Come on. Let's get out of here before someone decides to corner you for an impromptu interview." We left through a side door, avoiding the main corridor where I could hear voices still buzzing with the aftermath. David walked me to my desk, ran interference when a few people tried to approach, and basically acted as a human shield until the office finally started to empty out at end of day. Around 5:30, my phone rang. "Rachel Kim." "Ms. Thompson, Mr. Hayes would like to see you now if you're available. I'll be right up." This time, walking into the executive suite felt different, less like approaching a judge, more like, I wasn't sure what. A partnership, maybe. An alliance. Marcus was at his desk, jacket off, sleeves rolled up. He looked tired. In a way he hadn't that morning. The cost of what he'd just done settling into his shoulders. "Sit," he said, gesturing. "And please, call me Marcus. We're going to be working closely together." I sat, some of the formal tension easing. That was intense. "I've had better afternoons," he admitted with a slight smile. "But necessary ones. How are you holding up?" "Honestly, I feel like I'm in shock. This morning I was just trying not to get fired. Now I'm a manager." "Now you're a manager who everyone knows earned her position, even if some of them don't want to admit it." He pulled out a folder. "Let's talk logistics. Your new office is being set up. 4th floor, 2 doors down from here. You'll have an assistant starting Monday. Salary increase is detailed here." He slid papers across the desk. "And you'll need to build your team. I'd recommend starting with people you trust, people who understand what you're trying to build." The salary number made my eyes widen. It was more than double what I'd been making, more than I'd ever imagined making at 32. This is what you should have been making already, frankly, but better late than never. He leaned back. "I'm not going to lie to you, Maya. The next few months are going to be challenging. Some people are going to resent you. They're going to watch for mistakes, wait for you to fail, try to prove that I made a bad call promoting you. I know. But here's what I need you to remember. You earned this. Not because of what happened with Jason and Robert. You earned it by building something revolutionary when nobody was watching, by having the integrity to document the truth, and by having the courage to fight for what was right. Those are exactly the qualities I need leading innovation at this company. I felt tears threatening again and blinked them back hard. I won't let you down. I know you won't. But more importantly, don't let yourself down. This promotion isn't a favor. It's recognition. You don't owe me gratitude. You owe yourself the confidence to own what you've achieved. We spent another hour going over details, transition timeline, key initiatives, people he thought I should connect with, political landscapes I needed to navigate. By the time I left his office, the sun was setting over Atlanta, painting the sky in shades of orange and purple. I took the elevator down to the parking garage, my mind full of plans and possibilities and residual adrenaline. My car was one of the last ones remaining. Most people had fled hours ago, eager to escape the tension that still hung in the building like humidity. I was halfway to my car when I saw someone leaning against it. Robert Miller. My heart jumped into my throat. The parking garage was mostly empty, poorly lit, and suddenly felt very isolated. Security had escorted him out hours ago. What was he doing here? "We need to talk," he said. Every instinct screamed at me to turn around, go back inside, call security. But I also knew that running would just make this worse. Would make me look weak, scared. Exactly what he wanted. I stopped about 10 feet away from my car. Close enough to talk, far enough to run if I needed to. "You were escorted out," I said, keeping my voice steady. "You're not supposed to be here." "What? You going to call security on me again? Have me arrested for standing in a parking garage?" "If I need to." He laughed, but there was no humor in it. Just bitterness and rage barely held in check. "You know what you did today? You didn't just ruin my career. You ruined my nephew's future. You made me look like a fool in front of everyone I've worked with for 15 years. I told the truth about what you did. If that ruined you, that's on you." "The truth." He spat the word like it tasted bad. "The truth is that you're an ambitious woman who saw an opportunity and manipulated the situation to get ahead. The truth is that your nephew stole my work and you helped him do it." "Nobody stole anything. I gave Jason access to research that was sitting unused. I helped him develop it into something presentation-worthy. That's called mentorship. That's called opportunity. That's called theft." I cut him off, anger overtaking fear. "You took my complete functional system and gave it to someone else. You lied to me, you gaslit me, and when I confronted you, you told me to let it go because that's how business works." "Well, guess what, Robert? That's not how business works anymore. Not at Bright Tech. Not while Marcus Hayes is CEO. His face twisted with something ugly. "You think you won? You think this is over? You just made yourself a target, Maya. Every mistake you make, every project that falls short, every decision that doesn't work out perfectly, people will be watching, waiting. And when you fail, because you will fail, everyone does, they'll say Marcus made a bad call. They'll say you didn't deserve the promotion. They'll say you only got it because... Because what, Robert? Say it. Finish that sentence." He stopped, jaw working, knowing exactly what he'd almost said and how it would sound. "Get away from my car," I said coldly. "And if you ever approach me again, I will call the police. Not security. Police. You understand?" For a moment I thought, he might actually do something. Lunge at me, hit me, something that would cross the line from intimidation to assault. His hands were clenched into fists, his whole body radiating violence barely restrained. Then his phone rang. The sound broke whatever moment we were locked in. He glanced at it, then back at me. "This isn't over," he said. "Yeah, it is. You're just too bitter to see it yet." He walked away, toward a car I hadn't noticed in the shadows. I waited until he drove off, tires squealing slightly on the concrete, before I allowed myself to shake. Holy shit. Holy shit. I got in my car with trembling hands, locked the doors immediately, and just sat there for a minute, breathing hard. That could have gone so much worse. He could have actually hurt me, could have... My phone rang. Shanice, where are you? I've been calling for an hour. Parking garage. I'm okay. I'm fine. You don't sound fine. Robert was waiting at my car. He's gone now. I'm okay. What? Maya, you need to report that. That's threatening behavior. I know, I will. I just need a minute. I'm coming over. Don't argue. I'm bringing pizza and I'm staying the night. She hung up before I could protest. I drove home on autopilot, my mind replaying the entire day. The meeting with Marcus, the all-hands announcement, the promotions and terminations, Robert's final threat. It felt like I'd lived a week in the span of 8 hours. When I got to my apartment, Shanice was already there with pizza, wings, and a bottle of wine that probably cost more than she should have spent. Tell me everything, she demanded. So I did. Every detail, every moment, every fear and triumph. By the time I finished, we'd demolished the pizza and were halfway through the wine. You know what this means, right? Shanice said. That I need to sleep with one eye open? That you won. Completely. Undeniably. You beat the system, Maya. You actually beat it. I thought about that. About Marcus's public support. About the promotion. About Robert's face when he realized he couldn't protect his nephew anymore. Yeah, I said finally. I guess I did. So how does it feel? I considered the question honestly. How did it feel to be visible, validated, vindicated? To have fought and won? To have the truth matter more than politics? Terrifying, I admitted. And also, like maybe I can finally breathe. The next morning, I woke up to 17 missed calls and 43 text messages. For a disorienting moment, lying in bed with sunlight streaming through my blinds and Shanice snoring on my couch, I thought maybe yesterday had been a fever dream. Maybe I'd imagined the whole thing. The meeting, the exposure, the promotion. Maybe I was still just Maya Thompson, invisible senior engineer, watching someone else take credit for my work. Then I opened my phone. The messages were from everyone. Colleagues I'd worked with for years, people I'd never spoken to, former classmates who'd somehow heard the news. Most were congratulatory. So proud of you. And you deserved this. And about time. But some were different, didn't realize Bright was playing identity politics. Now! Read one from a number I didn't recognize. Hope! You can handle the pressure of a job. You're not qualified for, said another. Deleted those without responding. I'd been warned this was coming. Didn't make it feel any better to see it in writing. Shanice stumbled into my bedroom around 7:30, hair wrapped in a silk scarf, eyes barely open. Please tell me you have coffee. Making some now. You're a saint. She collapsed onto my bed. How'd you sleep? Like someone who just blew up her entire career and doesn't know if she'll still have a job next week. You have a promotion, Maya. In writing. Marcus Hayes publicly backed you. You're good. Robert threatened me in a parking garage last night. I'm not sure good is the word I'd use. She sat up straighter, suddenly more awake. Did you report it? I'm going to. I wanted one night to process everything before I made it even bigger. Make it bigger. That man should not be anywhere near you or this building. She reached for my phone. In fact, let me call... No. I took the phone back gently. I'll handle it. I need to handle it myself. That's part of what this new role means, right? Being able to deal with the hard stuff without someone else fighting my battles. Shanice looked at me for a long moment, then nodded. Okay, but if he comes near you again, I'm calling the police myself. I don't care what you say. I got to work at 8 a.m. sharp. Early but not suspiciously early. I wanted to establish a pattern. Serious, dedicated, professional. Give them no ammunition to say I didn't deserve this. The lobby felt different. Or maybe I felt different. People looked at me, really looked, not through, and I couldn't tell if it was respect or resentment or just curiosity. The receptionist who'd never bothered to learn my name called out, "Good morning, Ms. Thompson," with a brightness that felt performative. Everything was going to feel performative for a while. I'd have to learn to live with that. My old desk looked small somehow, temporary. I gathered a few personal items, photos of my family, the succulent plant Shanice had given me, my favorite coffee mug, and headed to the 4th floor, my new office. The door was open, and inside was luxury I wasn't prepared for. A real desk, not a cubicle partition. Windows overlooking downtown. A leather chair that probably cost more than my first car. Bookshelves waiting to be filled. Space to actually think, to create, to lead. I set my box down and just stood there for a minute, taking it in. Impressive, isn't it? I turned to find Marcus in the doorway, coffee in hand, looking more relaxed than he had yesterday. Figured you'd be in early. Brought you this. He handed me a Bright Tech mug. Welcome to management. The coffee gets better up here. I took it, smiling despite myself. Is that the real perk? Better coffee? That and people actually listen when you talk. Well, most people. He stepped into the office, looking around with an appraising eye. Rachel will be your assistant 3 days a week until we hire you someone full-time. IT is setting up your new computer this morning, and you have your first leadership meeting at 10. Today? I thought I'd have more time to transition. You thought wrong. But his tone was kind, not critical. Leadership doesn't wait for you to feel ready, Maya. You jump in and figure it out while swimming. Besides, you've been ready. You just didn't have the title before. He was right. I'd been leading in everything but name for years, mentoring junior engineers, solving impossible problems, innovating while invisible. The only thing that had changed was that now people had to acknowledge it. Okay, I said. 10 o'clock. What's the meeting about? Strategy session for Q4 initiatives. You'll be presenting Project Sentinel's implementation timeline and resource needs. Basically, you're asking for budget and team members, and the other directors will either support you or try to protect their own territories. He paused. It's going to be interesting given that one of those directors was Robert's closest ally. Who? David Kozlowski, Operations. He and Robert went way back, came up through the company together. He wasn't at yesterday's meeting, was out with a client, but he's heard by now, and he's not happy. Great. My first leadership meeting and I'd already have an enemy in the room. Can I ask you something? I said, always. Why are you throwing me into this so fast? Wouldn't it be smarter to ease me in, let people adjust to the new reality before I start asking for resources? Marcus smiled. You're thinking like someone who's afraid of making waves. But you already made the biggest wave possible yesterday. Now you need to show everyone that you can handle the position, that you're not just a symbol or a corrective action. You're a leader who delivers results. The fastest way to do that is to dive in and prove it. And if I fail, then you fail forward. Learn from it and do better next time. But you won't fail. You built Sentinel on your own time with no budget and no support. Imagine what you'll do with actual resources and a team. He left me to settle in, and I spent the next hour reviewing files, learning the systems, and trying to prepare for a meeting I felt wildly unprepared for. Rachel appeared at 9:30 with a briefing packet, budget numbers, team capacity reports, competitive analysis, and talked me through the key points. Kozlowski will push back on headcount, she warned. He always does. Don't take it personally. Just stick to your data and Marcus will back you up. At 9:55, I gathered my materials and headed to the executive conference room. It was smaller than the all-hands space, but infinitely more intimidating. Dark wood table, leather chairs, walls covered in awards and achievement plaques. This was where decisions got made, where power lived. 4 people were already seated. Marcus at the head of the table. 2 directors I recognized but had never spoken to, Linda Chen from sales, Marcus Washington from finance. And at the far end, arms crossed, expression stony, David Kozlowski. He was maybe 60, white, with iron gray hair and the kind of face that looked permanently skeptical. When I entered, his eyes tracked me with undisguised hostility. Everyone, you know Maya Thompson, our new senior innovation manager, Marcus said smoothly. Maya, have a seat. I took the empty chair next to Linda, trying to project confidence I didn't entirely feel. "Let's get started," Marcus said. "Maya, you have the floor. Walk us through Sentinel's implementation plan. This was it. Sink or swim." I opened my presentation on the screen at the front of the room and began. Project Sentinel represents a fundamental shift in how we approach predictive analytics. Implementation will happen in 3 phases over 6 months. I walked them through the technical architecture, the resource requirements, the expected ROI. I'd practiced this pitch 100 times in my head, and now I delivered it with as much authority as I could manufacture. Linda asked smart questions about market applications. Marcus W. wanted to know about cost-benefit analysis. I answered each one, feeling my confidence grow with every successful explanation. Then Kozlowski spoke. "This all sounds very impressive, Ms. Thompson. Very ambitious. But I have concerns." "I'd be happy to address them," I said evenly. "My concern is that we're betting significant resources on a project that was, let's be honest, developed under questionable circumstances. We had one person present it last week. Now we have another person claiming ownership. How do we know the project is even viable? How do we know this isn't just a political play that's going to waste our time and money?" The room went quiet. Linda looked uncomfortable. Marcus W. studied his notes. Marcus Hayes's expression didn't change, but I saw his jaw tighten slightly. I took a breath, keeping my voice level. "The project's viability isn't questionable. It's been tested extensively. I can provide 6 weeks of trial data showing its accuracy and efficiency. As for the circumstances of its development, yes, there was a dispute about authorship. That dispute has been resolved with documented evidence. But even if you don't trust me, trust the data. The system works. The question isn't whether it's viable, it's whether we're going to implement it or let our competitors build something similar first. Easy to say when you have everything to gain and nothing to lose. Actually, I have plenty to lose. My reputation, my credibility, my career if this fails. Which is exactly why I'm not going to let it fail." Kozlowski leaned back, arms still crossed. "Robert Miller was a friend of mine. A good man. 15 years with this company. And yesterday he got humiliated and fired over some files and hurt feelings." "He got fired for theft," I said, feeling anger starting to burn through my professionalism. "And for gaslighting an employee who reported that theft. Those aren't hurt feelings. That's misconduct. That's your version."
That's the documented, verified, legally defensible version. But if you want to keep defending him, go ahead. Just know that you're defending someone who violated every ethical standard we claim to hold. "That's enough." Marcus's voice cut through the tension. "David, you're entitled to your opinion about Robert, but you're not entitled to undermine a legitimate project or question Maya's credibility based on personal loyalty to someone who broke policy. If you have substantive concerns about Sentinel's implementation, raise them. Otherwise, we're moving forward." Kozlowski's face reddened. "I'm raising a concern about judgment, about promoting someone who's been here 4 years over people with decades of experience, about rewarding—" "Careful, David." Marcus's voice went cold. "Very careful about how you finish that sentence." The implication hung in the air. We all knew what Kozlowski wanted to say, what he was dancing around, that I'd been promoted because of race, because of politics, because of anything except merit. "I'm just saying," Kozlowski continued, slightly subdued but not backing down, "that this whole situation feels rushed, reactionary, like we're making long-term decisions based on short-term optics." "The decision is made," Marcus said flatly. "Maya is leading innovation. Sentinel is moving forward. You can choose to support that or not, but you can't obstruct it. Clear?" Kozlowski nodded stiffly. The rest of the meeting was professional but tense. We approved my budget request, allocated the team members I needed, set implementation timelines, but the damage was done. I'd made my first enemy in leadership, and he wasn't going to make this easy. After the meeting, Linda caught up with me in the hallway. "Don't let David get to you. He's old school, doesn't like change, and he's bitter about Robert. But his opinion doesn't matter. The work matters. Thanks, I said, meaning it. Also, that was a good presentation. Solid data, clear vision. You're going to do fine up here. By lunch, word had spread about the leadership meeting. I could see it in how people looked at me, some with sympathy, some with respect for standing up to Kozlowski, some with confirmation that I was causing trouble. I ate lunch at my desk, not ready to face the cafeteria gauntlet. David Chen stopped by around 1. Heard you had a rough morning meeting. News travels fast. Kozlowski's been bad-mouthing you to anyone who'll listen. Says you're in over your head. Says Marcus made a mistake. He paused. Nobody's listening for what it's worth. Most people see him for what he is, bitter and protecting his friend. Most people, not everyone. No, David admitted, not everyone, but enough. And the ones who matter, Marcus, Linda, the people who actually understand innovation, they're with you. That evening, I got an email from HR. Subject, incident report required. They wanted details about Robert's confrontation in the parking garage. Apparently, security footage had caught the interaction, and they needed my statement for their records and for potential legal action. I spent an hour writing it out. What he'd said, how he'd behaved, why I'd felt threatened. Reading it back made me realize how serious it had been, how easily it could have gone worse. I hit send and felt something release in my chest. I'd reported it, put it on the record, protected myself. My phone rang. Unknown number, but local. Miss Thompson, this is Detective Sarah Chen with Atlanta PD. We received a report about an incident in your workplace parking garage. Would you be available to discuss it? My heart sank. This was escalating beyond HR, beyond corporate discipline. This was becoming a legal matter. Yes, I can talk now. We spent 20 minutes going over details. The detective was professional, thorough, and clearly taking it seriously. We'll be contacting Mr. Miller to get his statement. Given his termination and this incident, we may recommend a restraining order. That would legally prohibit him from coming within a certain distance of you or the workplace. Would he be arrested? Not unless he violates the order, but it creates legal consequences if he does anything similar. It's protection, Miss Thompson. I'd recommend it. After we hung up, I sat in my new office, in my leather chair, looking at an Atlantis skyline turning golden in the sunset. I'd won. Objectively, undeniably, I'd won. So why did victory feel so much like war? Shanice came over again that night, uninvited but welcome. She took one look at my face and pulled me into a hug. Rough gay? Kozlowski hates me. HR is involved. The police are involved. And I keep waiting for someone to tell me this was all a mistake and I need to go back to my cubicle. But that's not happening. No, it's not. Then you're doing it, Maya. Actually doing it. Leading, dealing with the hard stuff, being visible even when visibility means being a target. I don't know if I'm strong enough for this. You are. You know how I know. Because you already survived the hardest part. You survived being invisible. Everything else is just learning how to handle being seen. We ordered Thai food. Again, it was becoming our tradition apparently. And she stayed until I stopped looking like I might shatter. The next day, Friday, was quieter. I met with my new team members, started mapping out Sentinel's implementation, and avoided Kozlowski entirely. Marcus stopped by my office at the end of the day. How are you holding up? Still standing. That's all you need to do right now. Stand. Be present. Do the work. The rest will follow. He handed me a folder. Restraining order against Robert Miller. Judge approved it this morning. He's not allowed within 500 feet of you or Bright Tech property. I took the folder, feeling a strange mix of relief and sadness. It had come to this. Legal protection from someone who once pretended to be my champion. Also, Marcus continued, I heard what Kozlowski said in the meeting. I want you to know that if he continues that behavior, there will be consequences. I won't tolerate undermining my decisions or creating a hostile environment. Thank you, but I can handle it. I know you can. Doesn't mean you should have to. He turned to leave, then paused. Maya, you did good this week. Really good. I know it doesn't feel like it yet, but you did. After he left, I sat in my office alone, watching the sunset paint Atlanta in shades of fire. I thought about my grandmother, about how she'd navigated her own version of this fight, about my mother teaching in schools that didn't value her, about every Black woman who'd ever had to be twice as good for half the credit. I'd won a battle, but the war for respect, for equity, for the right to exist in spaces that didn't want me, that war was ongoing. The difference now was that I had a position to fight from. Resources, authority, visibility. Robert and Jason had fallen, publicly, definitively, deservedly. But their fall was just the beginning of my rise, and I was going to make it count. 3 months later, I stopped touching over my shoulder. Not completely. You don't undo years of hypervigilance in a single season, but enough that I could walk through Bright Tech's lobby without my stomach clenching. Enough that I could present in meetings without wondering if someone was going to challenge my right to be there. Enough that when people said good morning, I believed they meant it at least half of the time. The restraining order against Robert had held. He'd tried to contact me once, a long, rambling email sent to my personal address that somehow blamed me for destroying his family, his reputation, his life. I'd forwarded it to Detective Chen without reading past the first paragraph. She'd called him in for a warning, and I hadn't heard from him since. Jason had apparently moved back to wherever he'd come from before Bright Tech. Someone told me he'd gotten the job at his father's insurance company, where nepotism was expected, and nobody cared if you'd stolen an AI system in your last position. I didn't think about him much. He'd been a symptom, not the disease. Kozlowski had lasted exactly 6 more weeks before Marcus encouraged his early retirement. Officially, it was a mutual decision based on differing visions for the company's future. Unofficially, he'd made one too many comments about diversity hires, and Marcus had run out of patience. His replacement, Jennifer Park, was a 42-year-old former Google executive who told me in our first meeting, "I don't care who you are or what you look like. I care if you deliver results. So let's deliver some results." I liked her immediately. Project Sentinel launched in August. Not a soft launch, not a beta test, a full deployment across all our systems, with a press release and a client presentation, and Marcus announcing it as Bright Tech's flagship innovation for the year. My name was on everything. Every presentation, every document, every news article. Developed by Maya Thompson wasn't a footnote. It was the headline. The system worked flawlessly, better than flawlessly. Within the first month, it predicted and prevented 3 major system failures that would have cost us millions. It optimized resource allocation so efficiently that finance actually sent me a thank you email. Clients started asking specifically about Sentinel, about whether they could license the technology, about whether we could develop custom versions for their needs. I'd created something that mattered, and this time, everyone knew exactly who'd created it. My team had grown to 8 people, handpicked engineers and data scientists who shared my vision, and more importantly, my work ethic. David Chan was my senior technical lead, which felt right. We'd been in the trenches together long enough to trust each other completely. We met every Monday morning in my office, still a surreal experience having an office, to review progress, troubleshoot issues, and plan the week ahead. These meetings felt different from any I'd attended before. People listened when I spoke. They implemented what I suggested. They trusted my judgment not because they had to, but because I'd earned it. On a Thursday in late September, Marcus called me into his office. I went up expecting another project discussion, maybe some new initiative he wanted me to lead. Instead, I found him standing by the window, looking at Atlanta with an expression I couldn't quite read. "Close the door," he said. I did, feeling the first flutter of nervousness. His tone was serious but not angry. Contemplative, maybe. "I got a call this morning," he began, turning to face me. "From Christina Williams. Do you know who that is?" I searched my memory and came up empty. "No, sir. She's the CEO of Meridian Technologies, one of our biggest competitors." My stomach dropped. "Okay." "She wanted to talk about you. Specifically, she wanted to know if we'd consider letting you go if they made you the right offer." The world tilted slightly. "They want me to hire me?" "They want to make you their chief innovation officer." She didn't name a number, but she said it would be extremely competitive. He paused, studying my reaction. "I told her you weren't available and hung up. But I thought you should know." I sat down without being invited, processing this. 3 months ago, I'd been fighting for my job. Now, a competitor was trying to poach me for a C-suite position. "What would you have done if I'd said yes?" I asked. Marcus smiled slightly. "Fought like hell to keep you. Made a counteroffer. Reminded you that Bright Tech gave you the platform when others overlooked you." He sat on the edge of his desk. "But I also would have understood if you'd been interested. That's the thing about developing real talent. Sometimes they outgrow you." "I'm not interested. You didn't even ask about the money." "Don't care about the money." "Well, I care," I corrected, "but not enough to leave. Everything I've built is here. My team is here. The fight I won, the one that matters, was here. I'm not leaving before I prove what that fight was worth." Marcus nodded, looking satisfied. "Good, because I have something else to tell you. Next month, the board is meeting to discuss succession planning. Not immediate. I'm not going anywhere soon, but long-term leadership development. Your name is on that list, Maya. For VP of Innovation and Technology, potentially CTO track." I couldn't breathe. "That's Marcus. I've been a manager for 3 months. And you've accomplished more in those 3 months than some people do in 3 years. You launched a revolutionary product. You built a team from scratch. You handled opposition with grace and competence. You've proven yourself." He paused. "Plus, I told you when I promoted you, this wasn't charity. This was recognition of what you'd already demonstrated. I'm just making sure the board sees what I see." "What if I'm not ready?" "Nobody's ever ready. You prepare, you learn, you adapt. But the foundation is there. Besides, the best way to prepare for bigger leadership is to start thinking like a bigger leader. So I have an assignment for you." I pulled out my phone to take notes. "What kind of assignment?" "I want you to develop a 5-year innovation strategy for Bright Tech. What technologies should we invest in? What markets should we pursue? How do we stay ahead of competitors? Treat it like you're already the VP. Show me and the board what your vision looks like at scale." This was a test, a big one, the kind that could cement my trajectory or expose my limitations. "When do you need it?" "Board meeting is November 10th. So you have about 6 weeks." 6 weeks to design the future of a multi-million-dollar tech company. No pressure. "I'll have it ready," I said with more confidence than I felt. Over the next month, I threw myself into that strategy document. I researched, analyzed, consulted with team members, stayed up late mapping out scenarios and projections. It consumed me in the best possible way, the kind of challenge that made me remember why I'd fallen in love with technology in the first place. Shanice barely saw me during that time, but when she did, she noticed the change. "You look different," she said, one Saturday morning when she dragged me away from my laptop for brunch. "Different how? Tired? Stressed?" "Happy." "You look happy, Maya. Like genuinely happy in a way I haven't seen since college." I thought about that. Was I happy? Or was I just too busy to be anxious? "I think I am," I admitted. "It's weird. I'm working harder than I ever have. I'm under more pressure, more scrutiny, but it feels right. Like this is what I was supposed to be doing all along." "That's because it is what you were supposed to be doing. You were just stuck waiting for the world to catch up with what you already knew." She stabbed a piece of waffle with emphasis. "And now that it has, you're thriving." 2 days before the board presentation, Marcus reviewed my strategy document. I sat in his office while he read all 63 pages, watching his expression for any sign of approval or disappointment. Finally, he looked up. "This is exceptional work, Maya. Comprehensive, forward-thinking, grounded in solid analysis. The board is going to be impressed." Relief flooded through me. "Thank you. I wasn't sure if I didn't want it to seem like I was pushing a personal agenda." "It's not a personal agenda. It's good business. Diverse teams innovate better. That's proven. But more than that, if we're going to be an industry leader, we need to lead on this too. So expand this section. Make it central to the vision, not peripheral. Show them how talent development and innovation strategy are interconnected." I nodded, understanding what he was really saying. Don't hide who you are or what you represent. Make it part of the solution. I spent the next day reworking that section, and when I finished, it was the strongest part of the document. Not because it was about diversity, but because it was about building something sustainable, something that would last beyond any one person's tenure. The board meeting was on a Tuesday morning. I'd been in Bright main conference room before, but never for something like this. The board members were intimidating in that specific way that comes from decades of power. 4 men and 2 women, all over 50, all wearing expressions of polite skepticism. Marcus introduced me with a confidence that helped steady my nerves. Maya Thompson has been with Bright Tech for 4 years, and in the past 3 months, as Senior Innovation Manager, she's exceeded every expectation. Today, she's going to present her vision for our innovation strategy over the next 5 years. I stood, activated the presentation screen, and began. When I think about Bright Tech's future, I think about the question that drove me to create Project Sentinel. What if we stopped reacting to problems and started anticipating them? That question doesn't just apply to data systems. It applies to our entire approach to innovation. I walked them through market analysis, technological trends, competitive positioning. I presented my recommendations for AI integration, cybersecurity advancement, and sustainable tech development. And when I got to the section on talent development, I didn't soften it or make it safe. We cannot innovate our way into the future with a homogeneous workforce stuck in the past, I said, meeting the eyes of each board member. Study after study shows that diverse teams outperform homogeneous ones in problem solving, creativity, and innovation. But beyond the data, there's a simple truth. The talent is out there. We're just not looking in the right places, or we're not creating environments where that talent can thrive once we find it. I click to the next slide, showing my proposed mentorship programs, recruitment partnerships with HBCUs and minority serving institutions, and internal sponsorship initiatives. This isn't charity. This is competitive advantage. The companies that figure out how to attract, develop, and retain diverse talent will be the ones that lead. Everyone else will be playing catch up. One of the board members, Lawrence Mitchell, an older white man who'd been skeptical throughout, raised his hand. "This all sounds very progressive, Ms. Thompson, but what's the ROI? How do we measure success on something so intangible?" I'd prepared for this. Innovation rate, patent applications, client satisfaction scores, and employee retention, all measurable metrics that improve with diverse teams. But if you want a more immediate measure, look at Project Sentinel. I developed it as one of the few Black women in our engineering department. Imagine what we could create if there were 10 more like me, or 100, bringing different perspectives and experiences to our problems. So you're saying we should hire people based on identity rather than qualifications. I'm saying we should expand our definition of qualifications to include people who've had to be 3 times as good to get half as far. Those are exactly the people who will push us forward. I paused, choosing my next words carefully. And respectfully, sir, I'm not hypothesizing. I'm describing what actually happened. I was here, qualified, innovative, creating value. The question isn't whether diverse talent can perform. I'm proof it can. The question is whether we're going to systematically develop that talent or keep accidentally discovering it. Lawrence sat back, expression unreadable, but one of the female board members, Patricia Okonkwo, a Nigerian-American venture capitalist, was nodding. "I think Ms. Thompson makes an excellent point. We need to be proactive, not reactive." She looked at Marcus. "How soon could we implement these recommendations?" "Some immediately, some over the next fiscal year. But with board approval, we could launch the first phase in Q1. They asked more questions about budgets, timelines, risks. I answered each one, feeling more confident with each exchange. This wasn't just a presentation anymore. This was a conversation about the future, and I was being treated as an equal voice in shaping it. After 90 minutes, Marcus wrapped up. "Thank you, Maya. Excellent work. The board will deliberate and provide feedback." I was dismissed, sent back to my office to wait while they discussed my fate. David found me there 20 minutes later, staring at my computer without seeing it. "How'd it go?" "Either really well or I just talked myself out of any future promotions. Hard to say." "Knowing you, really well." He set a coffee on my desk, my favorite from the good machine on the executive floor. "Here, victory coffee or consolation coffee, depending." At 4:47 p.m., my phone rang. Marcus. "Can you come back up?" "Good news or bad news?" "Come up and find out." I took the elevator up with my heart in my throat, preparing for anything. When I entered the conference room, the board was still there, but the energy had shifted. Less formal, more relaxed. Marcus gestured to an empty chair. "Sit. We've made some decisions." I sat. Patricia spoke first. "Ms. Thompson, the board was unanimous in approving your innovation strategy. We found it comprehensive, forward-thinking, and grounded in both solid data and clear vision." Relief made my knees weak. Thank God I was already sitting. "And furthermore," Patricia continued, "we've decided to accelerate the succession planning timeline Marcus mentioned. Effective January 1st, you'll be promoted to Vice President of Innovation and Technology. This comes with budget authority, expanded team oversight, and a seat at the executive table." I couldn't speak, couldn't process it. 3 months after I'd been fighting to prove I'd created my own project, now I was being offered a VP position. "Maya," Marcus was smiling, "you okay?" Yes, thank you. I'm honored. I won't let you down." "We know you won't," Patricia said. "You've already proven what you're capable of. Now we're giving you the platform to do it at scale." After they left, Marcus and I stood alone in the conference room, Atlanta's skyline darkening behind us. "You earned this," he said quietly. "Every bit of it. I hope you know that." "I do. Finally, I actually do." He shook my hand, then pulled me into a brief professional hug. "Congratulations, Madam Vice President. Welcome to the executive team." That night, I called everyone who mattered. My grandmother, who cried and said she'd always known. My mother, who said she was proud but not surprised. Shanice, who screamed so loud I had to pull the phone away from my ear again. And then I sat in my apartment, alone with my thoughts, and let it all sink in. 6 months ago, I'd been invisible, a senior engineer whose work was good enough to steal, but not good enough to credit. A Black woman navigating a system designed to overlook people like me. I fought back, not with anger or aggression or anything they could dismiss as emotional, but with documentation, integrity, and an unwillingness to disappear. And I won. Not just won the battle, won the war, changed the system, created space not just for me, but for everyone who'd come after me. The next morning, I went to work as usual, but when I passed the lobby photos, the executive portraits that had been almost entirely white men, I stopped. Marcus had added a new photo, mine. Maya Thompson, Vice President of Innovation and Technology. I stood there for a long moment, looking at my own face looking back at me. Proof that I existed, that I mattered, that my voice, my vision, my work had permanent space in this building. A young Black woman walked past, probably an intern or entry-level employee. She stopped when she saw me looking at the photo, then looked at it herself. "Is that you?" "Yeah, that's me." "That's amazing. I didn't know we had any Black executives." "We do now, and there's going to be more." She walked away looking thoughtful, and I realized that was the real victory. Not my promotion, not my office, not even the vindication of being proven right. The real victory was that young Black woman seeing herself reflected in leadership, knowing it was possible because she'd seen someone who looked like her do it. That afternoon, I stood at my office window looking out at Atlanta, this city of contradictions, this place where Black excellence and systemic barriers existed in constant tension. I thought about my grandmother working as a secretary, keeping secret copies of documents because she